This is going to be a long video with a lot of information. Last week I made a payment to my student loans, and that officially marked me paying off $40,000 of debt so far. I did start with $106,000 of debt in January of 2025, so I still have $66,000 left to go. But today I figured I would tell you guys exactly how I paid off $40,000 of debt in 12 months, all of the steps that I took, and what I learned along the way. First though, there are some context points that I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of if you're new here. So I am a dual income household. It is me and my husband, and so we are both working towards these debts. Obviously, the title says I paid it, but this is a we situation. This is just my channel where I'm sharing my story, so that is why I say I, and my husband would absolutely be fine with paying our debts slowly, but I have been the one that has convinced him and been the big push that we should really tackle them. So if you are a dual income household, you may have the same experience where one of you is pushing more than the other. So we just found a middle ground of what worked best for us, and I was able to convince him to let me kind of pay more on our debts for the year. The other thing is that we have one child, our son, and we pay about $20,000 in daycare for him. It's just over $20,000. So this is just hopefully a motivator for those of you who also have high responsibilities financially, that maybe you can look at some ways that you can maybe pay extra towards debt. And then third of all, I have made plenty of financial mistakes in my life. I am not perfect. I am still not perfect to this day. My husband and I just overspent on eating out last month. So we are not perfect. This is not to brag or anything. This is also not to give financial advice. This is just to share what we did, how we paid it, and then maybe you guys can take some of what you learned today from what I did and apply it to your own personal journey. This is just my story, and take from it what you need and leave what you don't need. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. So earlier this year, I was watching a video on YouTube and I saw someone comment that you will not get out of the hole until you stop digging. And I absolutely loved that quote because it is so true that when you first start your debt payoff journey, you have to stop digging yourself into further debt in order to actually get somewhere with it. So the first thing that my husband and I needed to do was stop digging and try to figure out how we were going to get ourselves out of this situation. So in order for us to know exactly how we were going to be able to pay off our debts and get our finances together, we had to know exactly what was going out. So I know that this is cliche and that a lot of people say this, but it is so true that if you want to pay off debt or you just want to start budgeting in general, you have to know what you're spending by tracking your spending. What I did was in October of 2024, I decided that I was going to start budgeting to try to figure out if there was a way that we could pay more on our debts to try to become debt-free. And so I knew that I was going to have to track my spending. So I tracked a few months back of all of my spending for those months. It was a long process because I had to track all 3 months in one time. So I just went back and wrote down everything that we spent for those months. And it was incredibly humbling to look at the numbers and just truly see where our money was going. It was also very insightful for us to just kind of understand where we were spending our money on, what things were the most expensive for us, and other just paying attention to frivolous things that we were spending money on that we probably didn't need in our lives. So I went ahead and I tracked my spending for a few months, and then I decided that moving forward, we were going to make a budget so that we would avoid spending money on those things that we didn't want to spend on. If you are someone that is interested in tracking your spending, you can track your spending with pretty much anything. There are plenty of apps out there. There are budgeting spreadsheets out there. You can use just a pen and paper to track your spending. I used to try to budget and track my spending by writing everything down with pen and paper, and that did not work for me. It just took a really long time for me to write everything down, and I didn't want the process of my budgeting and my tracking my spending to take me a really long time. I just wanted it to be something that was quick and simple, that didn't feel like a daunting task to me. So I found that using spreadsheets online was the best way for me to track my spending. I say online because I use Google Sheets, but you can use Excel or anything like that to track your spending. You can use an app to track your spending, or you can do pen and paper. I personally will have some budget trackers coming out here next week. You guys will see them. I'll tell you more about them next week, but I'll have some budget trackers coming out for spreadsheets as well as printable versions coming out. So if that interests you guys, then that's amazing. But if not, just find something that works for you. There's thousands of options out there. And like I said, grab a pen and a blank piece of paper and just start writing and tracking everything. The next thing that I did was I started setting up a budget, and I had no idea what I was doing for a budget at all. I didn't even know the first thing about what I needed to spend my money on, or how much money I needed to set aside for groceries or anything like that. So what I did was I took the 3 months of spending and broke it down into categories like my groceries, my utilities, and all of that. The mortgage, utilities, and some of those fixed expenses were the easiest ones to identify and put into the budget. But the groceries in that, I just kind of took what we were spending on groceries. So we were spending about $1,000 on groceries and $1,000 eating out. And I was like, this is insane that we were spending this much money on food in a month. So I ended up saying, okay, let's try and cut it down to $800 in groceries. And at that point, I think I did like $500 in eating out. And then I found that it was very possible for us to stay within that. So I slowly just started cutting us back down to what we are now. It kind of takes a few months in order to really understand and get a good groove of where you're at with your budget. I started my very first budget, like our very first month of budgeting was November of 2024. And I don't really think we got the hang of it until January of 2025, and maybe even February of 2025, really. And even to this day, I am not perfect with it, and I am still adjusting it as needed. But I think the best thing about it is that I am still consistently tracking all of our spending every month, and I track my spending once a week. That allows me to look back and just kind of see, okay, here's where we're at. Are we on track? What's it looking like coming up into the next week? Like, do we need to cut back on certain things? I have tried to stop tracking my spending, and I was like, I've got this. Like, I feel like I know, and I've got a pretty good idea of what we need to be spending and not spending. No, that does not work. I'm telling you, even from someone I got into a really good groove of kind of knowing exactly how much I could spend at the grocery store in that. You will overspend if you are not tracking your spending. At least I did. And so I have to always track my spending. So no matter what, even when we're out of debt someday completely, I will still track all of my spending and just keep a budget, because it is truly the only way to avoid overspending and having no idea where your money is going. Ultimately, for me though, the goal of my budget was to make sure that I was spending less than what I made so that we could put as much as we could towards the debts. So we needed to make sure that we had extra income to throw towards the debts, and that we were also saving some money on the side as well. Obviously, we have a very nice income that allows us to be able to do that. You just have to do what you can with what you have. And so even if you can throw $100 extra towards your debts for the month, that is better than nothing. But truly what we ended up doing was cutting out basically everything, like all of personal spending, all of our like fun money in that. We cut that down to very little so that we could throw as much as we could towards the debts and really just show how much financial discipline we could have for ourselves, because we knew that the ultimate goal eventually was going to pay off far more than giving ourselves personal spending. We do still do a little bit of personal spending here and there, but we don't even put it in our budget because it is just kind of off limits to us. And if we have to spend it, we figure it out. But that mainly comes from our general savings that we have, and we don't tap into our general savings a lot at all. The other thing is that we set up buckets. So we have 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund that we do not touch. It is in a high yield savings account. And then we have another general savings account. So if we have anything like pet expenses, like vet bills and any other kind of savings chunks that we need, we put that into a separate savings account. So we don't have our emergency fund and our general savings in the same account at all, because that emergency fund is just simply not available to us and does not exist until we actually have to use it, which we hopefully never do, but it is there in case we do. that has given us so much peace of mind for this entire journey and this process. And so I highly recommend, if you're able to, at least save a little bit of an emergency fund before you start paying on your debts, because that will give you a lot more ease of mind. The next thing that I did for trying to pay off debt as fast as I could, or as much as I could, was I did everything I could to try to make extra income. So this included trying to sell things from around our house. We also had another investment property that we ended up selling along the way. So this is why I don't want anyone to compare themselves to my journey or anyone else's journey, because it is completely personal. But we did have an entire extra house, which is insane. People, usually that is not the norm, to be able to sell. And we took $10,000 of that and put it towards our debts. So the rest of it is getting invested, and that small portion of it went towards the debts. I'm incredibly grateful and lucky that we had that. Obviously, it was something that was my husband's first home that he purchased before him and I even met. And then we got into this home and kept that one. I have a whole other, like, I talk about it in past videos and that, but it is something that is incredibly important to mention, because a lot of people just see like, oh, $40,000, that's so much. But when you really break it down, it's like, okay, well, it probably was 30 from our personal income, and 10,000 of it came from an investment property. But even beyond just selling things, I picked up a part-time job during all of this, and I just did whatever I could. We had sell some stuff at garage sales, just tried to find ways to make some extra money that we could put towards the debts. It is, I will say, it is a lot of grind for very little. Like, your success in your grind has to come from seeing those numbers decrease. You have to feel that like excitement and that happiness about those numbers going down in order for this to probably be successful for you. It is the end goal that I can see and still visualize, and that is the reason why I'm able to push forward and just throw whatever I can towards it. And the other thing that we did to make extra income was we shopped around for our insurance company. And so we were able to get cheaper insurance. So like if we were paying $160 a month in insurance and now we're paying $110, that $50 just automatically went towards our debts. And we did this with our PMI insurance. So our PMI insurance, we called and had them come out and appraise our home in order to drop the PMI early. So with that, that's $93 a month. So now we take that $93 and we put it towards the debts every month. So calling around, trying to get rid of those things, every little dollar that we could find or free up for the month, we put that towards our debts. And eventually all of that stacks up. The next thing that I did along this entire journey was I personally, my husband did not have to do this, but personally, I needed to shift my mindset on items. We have to remember that the urge to buy things is completely normal, but we have to figure out a way to stop ourselves from impulse buying or giving into those urges to purchase things. I still watch short form content every once in a while, but I found that watching short form content was really hard for me to not spend money on things, because something was being sold to me like every second of every day. And so I was able to make a better shift by moving to long form content and focusing more on personal growth videos and finance videos and all of that, because oftentimes those people are not trying to sell you things, or if they are trying to sell you things, it's usually like a financial tool or something. So I do still watch a little bit of short form content, but I have found in the past year, I much prefer long form now. And I also prefer making long form content over short form. So all in all, I have just completely shifted the way that I am thinking about consumerism and how I am exposing myself to consumerism, basically. I also had to do an entire mental shift on the product and quality of items that I was purchasing. This one was a really big one that helped me, because I started focusing more on better quality clothing items, better quality materials of things. I started reading all of the reviews of products, doing more research on the products, and 9 times out of 10, after I did all of the research and checked out the materials and fabric and all of that, I would probably end up not purchasing that thing that I thought I wanted in the first place. Once you start to kind of dig behind the layers, you find out that there's a lot of things that aren't sustainably made or aren't really good for you to purchase or aren't good for the environment for you to purchase them. So I found that kind of going that route helped me to not buy so many things. I also use the list method. So anything that I think that I want, I put on a list, whether it's an Amazon list, if you use Amazon, or even just writing something down that you like and wanted to purchase. And then I leave it there for 2 to 3 weeks. At that 2 to 3 week mark, if I still want to purchase that item, then I will strongly consider doing so. But usually by the time that 2 or 3 weeks rolls around, my impulse to want that item has surpassed and I no longer feel like I need it. So I just remove it off the list and move forward. So those things have been a massive help in getting me to stop over consuming items and just be more okay with what I already have on hand. The next thing that has been huge in helping me with my debt payoff journey has been picking up hobbies and learning new skills. I've talked about this before in past videos, but I truly believe that picking up hobbies and learning new skills has been a massive game changer in my debt payoff journey because it is giving me something more of a purpose for something to do rather than just scrolling on my phone or going to the store or whatever. Obviously, if you're picking up a hobby, you are going to have to buy some things. So don't pick too expensive of hobbies. I just went for some cheaper ones. Like I got coloring books and some markers. And then I have some like canvases with paint and I love to do puzzles. So even your local library will probably have like puzzles or little things that you can do. Something that just kind of keeps you occupied and keeps your mind busy is really great. Even for puzzles, I have done the same puzzles multiple times. I just pull them back out a few months later and do them again, and it works for me. I don't need a new puzzle every single time. Anytime you have the urge to spend, pull out one of your hobbies and do that, or learn a new skill. I picked up doing YouTube and filming videos. So my new skill that I've been trying to learn is editing. So I've been working on editing just on my own. I edit all of my own videos, obviously, and just something to expand my knowledge and do things other than just being a consumer. The other thing that I really had to come to terms with was knowing that I had to sacrifice. So I had to sacrifice personal spending. I had to sacrifice how much I was spending. So I stopped going to Starbucks and getting my coffee there. I now make my coffee at home, and arguably, I think my coffee at home is better than probably Starbucks. That's just for my own personal taste because I can customize it to me. But you are going to have to sacrifice some things, and you just have to be okay with that. You're going to have to sacrifice eating out a lot. You're going to have to sacrifice how much money or like the items that you're able to get at the grocery store. You have to sacrifice like buying clothes, all of that. You are going to have to sacrifice it, but you're sacrificing it for the greater good. Knowing that you're sacrificing this stuff only for a temporary period, this isn't forever. Eventually, we will be debt-free outside of our mortgage, and I can go back to buying things or giving myself a personal spending budget, which I am so excited for that day. But eventually, I will be able to get back to that. And so for right now, it's just temporary and we're just going to push through it. The other thing that I did in order to pay off my debts was anytime my dad offered a gift for me for either Christmas or my birthday, I asked for money that I could put towards my debts. So I got money from him for those things. And then any other time that I was able to find workarounds, like I used child care credit through my employer, but it was a way to trick myself into saving my money on the side, and then I could request it back later. And so it was a savings that existed that was not sitting in my bank account. And then I was able to pull from that here at the end of the year and put a big lump sum down onto my student loans. So that was absolutely wonderful to have that. I mean, you could even set it up to where your direct deposit from your job, if you are able to tell them, like, you can do sometimes percentages or lump sums to go into different accounts. So you could set up a lump sum to go into like a separate account and then just forget about that account for a couple months and then use that to make big lump sums. Whatever you kind of need to do to trick yourself so that you are able to save your money and able to pay as much down on your debts as possible. The other thing was that I forgot to mention was that when we sold our other home, that meant that we had an entire mortgage payment every month that was no longer going to that investment property. So we didn't even let lifestyle creep happen with that one. We knew that that payment that we used to pay towards it was just going to go straight towards our debts. And we were not even going to act like it existed for our own personal spending at all. It just went strictly to debts. I also did this every time I got a raise at work. So if I got a raise, I didn't even act like I got that money, and that money goes straight to my debt payoff. So it is just every time we increase any sort of income, every time we get sort of extra money, we put all of that towards the debts, because I don't want to live in this debt payoff journey forever. I want this debt payoff journey to be done as quickly as I can possibly get it done, just because I am so excited to see what it is like to not have any sort of payments outside of my mortgage. I feel like I could probably go on and on about other things that I've done in order to pay off the debts, like just little tips and tricks and things that we've done to help us put everything extra towards our debts. So if you guys are interested in hearing anything more about this, let me know in the comments, and maybe I can make a part 2 about other things that we did, or getting more in depth about exactly how we did things. But doing all of these things and compounding them together is absolutely what has helped us to be able to pay off this much debt. And I am incredibly grateful that we've done it. I am shocked when I look back at just how much we've paid on our debts, and I'm excited to see what 2026 has to hold for us.